everybody the same question too, because when it comes to guys like maybe Strome here, obviously Kreider, and as far as maybe just Fast here as well too. Maybe somebody should take some time here and start, because I don't know what it is, but I don't know who else in the rest of the league, as far as other teams where the free agencies, where the free agent players are lining up here in the next year or two or whatever. So I look at it this way, because you said the thing, someday the rebuild has to stop, right? So I look at it this way. Is Kreider a guy? Is Strome a guy? Is Foster a guy? Is Buchnevich a guy that is going to be a guy that's going to carry a game or two in a tough playoff series and be there in 3 or 4 rounds, okay? Are these guys potentially expendable now in the short term with the prospect of freeing up either cap space or room if JD and Gorton are looking at, this guy's going to be up for free agency here in a year or two. So if we time this right, maybe we can bring him in like they brought in Panarin. Because I think down the road, I mean, you see the monster that Panarin is. We got Trouba. He's the stud back there, too. We've got our goaltending. We've got a couple of shining spots on the team as well as far as the young guys, our guys, our defensive core here, and Keandre Miller that's still going to come down the pipe and everything else. And the goaltending situation will work it out. But eventually, the goal scoring's got to be who can carry the load in the playoff series. So if it's Mika and Panarin, if those are the guys that are going to do it, they're going to need more help. Because guys like Kreider and Strome can be taken off their game during a series. There's no doubt about it. So I look at it in this way. If you think about the long-term picture here and where the Rangers can shorten the rebuild process, because this goaltending situation is fine. It's going to work out. Our defense, like I said, it's a learned thing. They'll be fine. And I also said that your offense is interchangeable. You can move guys out and bring guys in, and it's all about putting the puck in the net and then following a system, whatever Quinn is putting in. The system that he played against the Islanders the other night was pretty damn good. So if there's a potential for down the road where there's a couple of guys on some other teams out there right now that we don't know about, and maybe we just kind of look it up on the computer and say, hey, this guy's going to be a free agent, this guy's going to be a free agent. A guy like, I think he's got long-term deals. But like I say, like a Johnny Gaudreau out in Calgary or something like that, where you look at guys that are just superstar players that could come here and play, for the Rangers like Panarin's come in. I think that's something that we all have to kind of think about, too, that, JD and Gorton are not done here. They've got a core of talent. There's no doubt about it. It's young. But they're going to need some more superstar power to come in here. It's the same way you can look at the Islanders, too. They're a good team, but I don't think they have enough superstar power that's going to take them, to the Stanley Cup Finals and so on and so forth. So we'll see what happens. But that's my take on how they should start looking at these guys offensively for the Rangers in terms of, are they going to be there for you in, 3 or 4 rounds of playoff series to get you to, the promised land. Now, like I said, Kreider's been there on the team, and a couple of these guys, like I said, in the past, but can they do that now? And that's how I look at it. So if you can get these guys out now with the potential to freeze things up for some big guns coming down the road, I think maybe that's another way to look at it.
Yeah, and if they do end up trading Kreider, I mean, that's a huge void. Like, you're going to notice that he's not in the lineup, like, immediately. And I over the next, like, for the rest of the year, you're like, oh, my goodness. Like, he's a huge piece, like, right now. Like, if you take him out of that top 6, you take him off Zibanejad's wing, and, I don't know who you put up there, maybe Kakko, who's just not – he's not Kreider. He's not going to put in those sort of tough minutes, in front of the net, battling defensemen. It's going to be noticeable, and you may have some regret immediately afterward. I mean, or even for the next, like, year or so. Unless, like you said, unless they have their eye on somebody, they feel like they could bring in maybe who's younger or, maybe a little bit more talented than Kreider. I'm with you. I don't know who could potentially be available, but it'll be hard. I mean, it'll be a very unpopular decision, and for a year or two, unless they're able to find somebody to fill that void. Because if they do get rid of Kreider and the plan is let's bring up Kravtsov afterward. I mean, he's just not even in the same realm of a player. And there'll be, again, some people who will really be criticizing, the front office for it. But if they do have that plan in place, though, and they do have their eye on a couple of players who are going to be going into free agency, coming up, then maybe it's worth it if maybe they're a little bit younger. And when the team is ready to go into the, 2, 3, 4, rounds in the playoffs to get to the Stanley Cup, where they're making more of an impact than Kreider would in 2 to 3, 4 years. So we've said it a couple of times. These next couple of weeks and this trading deadline, it could potentially make or break what's ultimately going to happen with the rebuild. If they decide to hang on to Kreider, if they trade him, same with Strome and like you mentioned, Buchnevich is somebody I'm sure they're thinking about. Brady Shea, is he part of the future? And we were texting about Jesper Fast. I mean, he seems like, and I would never want to trade him. And I brought him up.
He's playing great, man.
Yeah, and I brought him up not because I want to trade him. I brought him up because he seems like a player that every team who goes on to win the Stanley Cup has on their team. So I can't imagine there won't be a number of teams, calling over to Gordon and seeing, hey, is this guy available? And you know what? The Rangers really aren't going anywhere. So if they could, get someone to overpay for Fast, I mean, they could re-sign him in the offseason. I mean, he's an unrestricted free agent. I mean, there's nothing that says that they can't bring him back over the summer. So, I mean, he is a rental, so maybe you won't get too much for him. But like you said, he's been great. He's done his typical defensive. He's been great defensively, as he always is, and now he's added some offense to his game. So I think a lot of teams will be sort of tripping all over themselves to add a guy like that to the back end of their lineup going into the playoffs. So if they can get something for him, I'd hate to see him go, and I'm not advocating, for him to go, but you still have the ability to re-sign him in the off season. If you can get some additional pieces, again, I don't really see us going anywhere this year. So, it may make sense to move him.
See, I disagree. I think the Rangers, they want to make the playoffs. Quinn has said as much, but I think this team wants to win as much as they possibly can this year. And, again, they show signs. I mean, the talent on this team, like I said, the inconsistency drives us crazy. And, again, they've got to put 5, 6, 7 wins up. They've got to do it. Any of the best teams that are out there right now, up in the top of the league, they've got to show that they can kind of, run it. You don't necessarily need that at the beginning of the year. It's not really a big deal. Teams can burn out. The Islanders might be one of those teams. But if you look at the top of the league right now, if the Rangers can kind of stay in the mix and they can just stay around this wild card thing, now they've got to beat Columbus. They've got to beat the Islanders. They've got to show this. They've got 2 games against Detroit coming up. And I don't know what language I'm speaking, ladies and gentlemen. I apologize about that. But I did have dental surgery this morning. They've got 2 games against Detroit. Now, Detroit is everybody's crushing Detroit. So they've got to get those 4 points from that team. They're better than those guys. But I think the Rangers, they want to win. And I think if this team gels and continues to progress, because if you look at the rest of the league here, and if you look at the Eastern Conference and the Metro and everything else, it's just as up for grabs as anybody else. You can make up 8 to 9 points in the next span here. And we talked about this, too, how this month and next month was going to be huge. And that's really going to determine everything, KD. We haven't seen it yet. We don't know. This is all, can this team do it? Do we think they can? Absolutely. Should Quinn ride Georgie for the next 4 games? Absolutely. Are the Lions playing good? Great. And everything else. But this is the thing. We're finally at that point now where Quinn can actually push the lever and go forward with the ship that he's got kind of, coming out of that game against the Islanders. And I think all of us could sit back and say, hey, fine. If they lose with that same lineup for the next 4 games and the same goaltender, then okay. But I would pat him on the back saying, at least you freaking went and did it, so we could finally find out if they can get the points going in one direction.
My concern with doing that is this. I think the Rangers actually going on a run and making some noise in the playoffs is a pipe dream. But it's wishful thinking, and I'd hate to see the Rangers end up like the Islanders did with the Tavares situation. If they're not willing to pay up, for Kreider and give him the 7 years he's likely looking for. I mean, are you ready to lose him for nothing in the offseason in the middle of a rebuild when you could have added?
Kreider's not a Tavares. You're not comparing the players, right? You're just comparing
I'm comparing the situation.
Gotcha, okay.
I'm comparing the situation where the Rangers are in, obviously, they are still in a rebuild at this point. Are you willing to just let an asset that you have right now go at the end of the year? If you're saying to yourself, well, we're not going to sign this guy for 7 years, you're essentially saying we're going to keep him around and let's see if we can make a run, but then we're going to lose him at the end of the year. I think that's absolutely a terrible way to go about it. I think you're just giving up an asset for nothing in the middle of a rebuild when you could bring in additional picks, a big time prospect or whatever it is that Kreider can command. I think that'd be negligent on the part of Gordon and JD to stick with Kreider because they have, they're hoping that they'll make a run. I just don't think it's worth it, at this point, and it's still in the beginning of a rebuild, to take that chance to potentially lose Kreider for nothing. And no, I don't mean he's like a Tavares, but you're going to get something good for him at the deadline if you'd be looking to trade him. Unless you've talked to the agent and they either are willing to give him 7 years or Kreider is willing to sign for 5 years. There's no way I think they should in any way risk losing him for nothing when they're still in the middle of a rebuild. There's no way.
Yeah, no, I hear. Look, it's valid points on all sides of it, and I think it's, like I said, it's an interesting kind of situation to look at. Again, good problem to have. We've got a good player on the team. If we do end up getting rid of him or getting something back, we will get something back for him, and it'll work out one way or the other. And if it works out to the point where he plays himself on to stay on this team, he's a huge part of the future and going forward, and they can work out all the money aspects of it. It's great too. So we'll see what happens. We're not there yet, but yeah, I'm just sticking with this thing, man. Win 5 or 6 in a row. And
no, I was gonna say, and there's positives to going that route too. I think that getting the young guys in a playoff race and potentially in the playoff has a lot of positives to it and helps with the rebuild as well. I mean, getting those guys that kind of experience will do nothing but help this team going forward. But I just think, from an asset standpoint, it just, to me, doesn't make much sense.
Yep, and we just got to hang out and wait and see. All right, KD, we're winding down here. A couple of things. I just want to throw something at you, too, and then if you got something you want to close out with, let me know. But speaking of Quinn, how things have been going on, obviously the up and down and the fun we've had here and, going back and forth, whether he should get fired and all that other stuff. But, with Gerard Gallant getting fired in Vegas today, which to me was just unbelievable. I mean, it's crazy town what's going on in Vegas. But if you look at some of the guys who've been fired, Laviolette gets fired the other day. Babcock's been fired. Hines gets fired from the Devils. He just gets rehired to take the place of Laviolette in Nashville. DeBoer got fired from San Jose. Now he's taking Gallant's job. Do you remember the series last year between Gallant and DeBoer? I mean, that was just vicious. Pavelski got hit and all that other stuff. I mean, the fact that now he's coaching that team is just crazy town. Like I said, it's crazy. Montgomery obviously got fired in Dallas because of the personal stuff. Bill Peters gone in Calgary. I think that's it as far as coaches. But those are some pretty big name coaches. Some established coaches, obviously some big franchises there that've got their own stuff that they've got to do as well. So when you look at the Rangers, as we just kind of focus on that, when you see the rest of the league here, and a lot of these GMs are just they're not waiting around and they're bringing the axe down on these guys. It's pretty surprising for me to see. I know it's part of the game, part of the league, but talking about our guy. And second year and seeing, like I said, the positive aspects coming through here and there throughout, it kind of puts things into perspective as far as the job Quinn's doing up against some of the best coaches in the league who are losing their jobs.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Quinn is in a different situation than those guys are. I mean, I think that the Rangers organization is being patient with the rebuild, and that means being patient with Quinn as well. So even though there's been a lot of ups and downs with this season, I think the front office expected it. So, I don't see that Quinn is in any kind of trouble, at least right now. Now, if this was this time, next year and the team is still sort of floundering and those big name coaches were out there, I would say that Quinn would need to be worried because I could absolutely see JD and Gordon talking and seeing Gallant out there and the Rangers sort of rebuild not going where it needs to be. and it's time to win at this point. We need to bring in